A leader is one who lights the path to the impossible and take those who follow their great heights. It is injustice to proceed to this event without falling upon our wings of flight, our pillar of strength, and our constant source of motivation, our beloved Principal Dr. Ganesh Babu. I would request Ganesh sir to introduce to the guest of honor.
Welcome back to AAAD Incubation webinar series. Our guest of honor for the day, Architect Amol Kumar Gupta, is a practicing architect and valuer currently based off Bhopal. Having done his graduation in architecture and post-graduation in environmental planning from the Maulana Azad College of Technology, Bhopal, presently called as Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, in the year 1985 and 2001 respectively, Sir has finished his doctoral research on the topic of validation of traditional Indian knowledge of home building. His fields of specialization include both individual and group housing. His professional experience ranges across a myriad of government and private constructions as well as development projects, some of the notable among which are large-scale projects and schemes being run for the government of Madhya Pradesh. Group housing schemes for Bhopal Development Authority, Sterling Builders and Contractors, Rashtriya Group, New Delhi, Urban Renewal Scheme for local body, sports centers, and several large-scale hospital buildings across India. Additionally, he has also been actively involved in several prominent government as well as professional committees working in the construction and development fields, like the Development Plan Committee for several prominent towns of Madhya Pradesh, Building Bylaws Committee, Government of Madhya Pradesh, Review Committee for Western Zone, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, various expert committees comprising by the Council of Architecture, etc. Being a proactive and dynamic individual, he is an important member of many professional and social organizations and bodies. He is currently serving as the National Junior Vice President of the Indian Institute of Architects for the term 2014 to 2017, Council member representing Madhya Pradesh, and the Executive Committee member for the term 2016 to 2019, and has also held many similar prominent positions in the same body in the past. Strong inclination and flair to the academia, he has previously been associated with many educational bodies and has been an active member of the Board of Governors of several institutions of national acclaim and importance like the Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, Bhopal, the School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal, Samrat Ashok Technology Institute, Madhya Pradesh. He has been appointed as the chairman of the Board of Governors for the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, an institute of national importance under MHRD, Government of India. He is appointed as independent director in DBL Infrastructures, Dilip Buildcon Limited, a pioneer company in field of development and infrastructure. Recently, he is also appointed as independent director in Satna Smart City Project, SATNA, Madhya Pradesh, and his achievements run in pages. We welcome you, sir, for this session. Today's speaker, a prominent and iconic architect, Architect James Law, has readily accepted to be with us. I welcome you, James Law, and I hope all the delegates and participants in today's webinar session will enjoy this evening. I would now like to request Sana to get into a formal introduction of the speaker. Over to Sana.
Yes. Before I introduce our guest speaker, Architect James Law, let me start with a small quote. The designer does not begin with some preconceived idea. Rather, the idea is the result of careful study and observation, and the design is the product of that idea. Hence, this goes very right with our speaker for today's session, Architect James Law. On behalf of AAAD, I take this privilege to welcome you, sir. To all the participants, let me give you a brief introduction of our guest speaker. James received his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees from Bartlett School of Architecture at University College London, and he is Chartered Architect of Royal Institute of British Architects. He is also a founder, chairman, and the CEO for James Law CYBERTECTURE. James Law is an architect, technologist, and entrepreneur. He is renowned for creating the philosophy of cybertecture, in which a better world is designed with technology to alleviate suffering for mankind. His company's project over buildings, spaces, technologies, education, and social design. James is a Justice of Peace, young global leader for the World Economic Forum, a council member for World Economic Forum, Global Agenda Council on Design and Innovation, board director of Hong Kong Design Center, board advisor of Hong Kong Design Association, and a member of Hong Kong Trade Development Council. James is also the founder of architecture, interior design, and technology. His design firm, that is James Law CYBERTECTURE, laboratory for future research firm, that is CYBERTECTURE X, design education institution, that is CYBERTECTURE Academy, and for charity, CYBERTECTURE for Humanity, Horatio Law Foundation. James and his companies are winner of multiple international awards, including the FT Asian Innovation Award, Edison Award for Innovation, Design for Asia Award, HSBC World Architecture Award, and he is the recipient of Asian Arab Awards 2019. James Law is an architect for world-renowned Opot Combat Tower, the world's first Apple iPod inspired building in Dubai. Architect for the futuristic high-speed transportation system called the Hyperloop. James also collaborated with the renowned film director Wong Kar-wai on the design of the movie 2046. James has a passion of art, social innovation, and travel. I would like to put some light on James' office, that is CYBERTECTURE. It aims to change the world by providing world-acclaimed leading edge design in architecture, interior design, master planning, consulting, technology and industrial design, artwork production, and design and build services for private, corporate, and institutional clients around the world. He has completed projects of wide ranges of types that are located internationally, including Hong Kong, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Moscow, Mumbai, New Delhi, Abidjan, and Beijing. The design team fully utilizes BMI, VR, AR, and 3D printing, with which they aim to bring design originality and X factor. I would like to welcome you for this incubation webinar. Thank you for accepting our request and giving us your valuable time, sir. Now, I may request you to take over the session.
Thank you so very much, and it's a real honor and pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank AAAD for inviting me, and namaste to everyone. I have had the honor of being working in India now for nearly 12 years, and it really is wonderful to be able to connect at this difficult time through the internet, to be able to share with you some of what's been happening with me and my projects and my office. And tonight, I would like to share something quite personal with you about architecture, which is that since COVID-19 has happened, I have rediscovered my passion for architecture through what I call the architecture of purpose. So tonight's talk is both about the work, but I think also I hope to share with you a passion that I have found, which I hope I can infect you all about what architecture can do for the world as we are facing a completely new and challenging time. So I will now start by sharing my screen, and then I will start my talk. All right. So my talk this evening is called CYBERTECTURE, an Architecture of Purpose. And I start this story by telling you that for a long time, I have been thinking about many things, as all architects do, about our world. I have been fascinated with the notions of urbanization and how that is coming in conflict with nature. And I've also been quite concerned about people, about the number of people on this planet not being able to afford to live, to eat, and perhaps even have enough space for their homes. I've also been very concerned about how we are building our architecture, which is really not catching up with the technology around us, and how we are powering it through the energy and the limited resources that we have. And ultimately, as somebody who is passionate about technology, what is the implication of the future technologies such as the internet and the artificial intelligence will have as an impact on the global environment for all humanity? And through those concerns, I have been very lucky in my practice to use a philosophy of cybertecture to create many projects which in parts deals with these issues. How buildings are built, how buildings are designed, and how buildings are used to be different in the 21st century through technology compared to what we were doing in the 20th century. This is what I call cybertecture. And in fact, the definition of architecture needs to be rediscovered in this kind of whole new normal that we are now facing. And what we should do moving ahead is a very important question that we, all as architects, must ask ourselves as we plan and design the future. But tonight's talk is very important to me, because as an architect, I ask myself every day now, what is my purpose? What is my purpose as an architect? Is it only to do bigger and bigger projects, more and more iconic, become more and more well-known, become more and more influential, just through the fame of being an architect or just being innovative? I don't think that is the answer. The answer is to find my own true purpose as an architect in light of seeing all of the problems that we can observe from around the world. So today, I wanted to share with you just two very humble projects, which I think has allowed me to find my purpose. But before I tell you the project, I have to share with you the background. So this is my home. My home is in Hong Kong, and I was born here, and my parents were poor immigrants to this city. But this city is famous for being very wealthy, very advanced, very innovative, very rich. But in fact, this city is also a city which is very complicated with many problems. One of the problems that it has is it's become the most expensive city in the world. And like many of the cities around the world that has become great, massive urbanized areas, people are facing a lot of problems living in cities. We have built these cities as giant monoliths of how architecture can contain huge numbers of people, high rises, skyscrapers, apartment blocks, etc. But behind this architecture are all of the problems of sustainability, the environment, and even the affordability of being able to live in a space. And in fact, these apartments that you see in this photo are extremely expensive and extremely small by global standards. But people have chosen to live in this city because they feel that this is where they will get a better future. As architects, have we allowed ourselves to create more of a problem, or are we solving a problem through the way in which we're building our cities. When our homes in these cities in Hong Kong are now costing an average of more than 3,000 US dollars a square feet. That's 100 times more expensive than in India. But this is really not even affordable to Hong Kong people. We have, by doing the architecture that we have done for our cities, created this huge problem. And the problem now is exacerbated by how we have created a whole new genre of architecture in our cities that are extremely small. These are called nano flats, and this is what you get in Hong Kong. Apartments have to be very, very small in order for people to afford them. Just this apartment is over 300,000 US dollars, but it is only 150 square feet of usable area. So in this architecture, you have to live, you have to bathe, you have to cook, you have to live, all in 150 square feet. And as a family, or even just as a couple, this is totally inadequate. But as you can see, everything is crammed into the small space. We have to ask ourselves, is this humane? Is this what all of the progress of all of the architects through history has now resulted in a world where we build nano flats for people? I ask myself, is this my purpose? I hope not. In Hong Kong, people are now forced to live in extremely tiny pigeonholes. These are some examples of the public housing that the lower income people, and even touching on some of the middle income people, are having to live in. And this problem is not being solved because our public housing that is being built is being built so slowly, and the need is raising so fast that it takes 5 to 10 years before we can get people into public housing. In the meantime, with the small savings and income, they can only live in tiny pigeonholes like this in a city like Hong Kong. So this is the condition that we have in Hong Kong. You may not really expect this from a wealthy place like my hometown, but this is the reality. I have seen this for real. In fact, when I started as a young man, my family started in such conditions. We lived in one room where we slept, where we ate, where we washed, where we did our homework. And this family that you see in this photo is an average family with an average income in Hong Kong, having to live in such an environment. What is my purpose? Am I supposed to just continue to make this a reality? Many families living in the modern world are having to pay extraordinary high amounts of money to live in the architecture that we build. Here is another example. This single parent family is renting this one small space for 1,000 US dollars a month. You can see the space. The child is sleeping on the bottom of a bunk bed. She's cooking next to him. The fridge is just next to that. There's no toilet. The toilet is shared somewhere out in the corridor with another household. For $1,000 a month, this is all you get in the modern city. Then, for the aged, for the elderly, what do they have as a choice? They may not have much savings. They have no family to take care of them. So they live in an architecture called cage living, literally live in a bunk space that is inside the metal cage where they keep their personal belongings. And they even have to pay up to about 250 US dollars a month. I ask myself once again, what is my purpose as an architect? What am I doing about this? Am I just going to build skyscrapers, or am I going to try and help to solve this problem? And when we collectively, architects, politicians, builders, society as a whole, cannot solve these problems, the problem is that people get very unhappy. Hong Kong has had over 2 years of riots and social unrest because so many people cannot afford to live in the architecture. The young people have lost hope. So they fight the government. They show their discontent. This is not the way in which we should be building a modern, humane, sustainable society. Last year, on one particular day, we had 2 million people out of 7 million people on the streets in Hong Kong, rioting against the livelihood issues. Yet the architect, you see the skyscrapers next to those buildings and then the condominiums. Back to architecture. Is the solution for a better future to create an architecture like this? Just a giant database, a matrix of anonymous, unknown, continuously stacked up spaces. Is this the future that we are all going to have to look forward to? I hope not. And unless we can break this problem, we are going to be stuck with the problem. So I say that conventional housing is actually now too slow to solve this problem. Now I tell all of this as background to the story I want to tell you tonight in my design, because I feel deeply, deeply, deeply that my skills and talents and education as an architect actually makes me responsible for this, and that I should use my innovation, my cybertecture, to try to relieve this. So the first project I want to share with you is called AAAD, and it's a very humble project. It is only 150 square feet in size, but it only costs $15,000 to build. And this is what it is. I decided one day that we should build a new kind of architecture, an architecture from readily available existing things. And I came across some concrete water pipes. And these concrete water pipes are very cheap. They're very brand new. They're very clean, very safe. And I decided, let's create a micro architecture that is extremely cheap, extremely well designed, extremely fast for people to live in. So I use these pipes to convert them into a single or two-person home. This is the 3D design that we made, and this is the real one we built. And this is called AAAD because it is a pod. It is an architecture that can be moved. It is very small, very mobile, very cheap. And this is very interesting because it takes away all of the conventional notions of architecture being artistic, being grounded in a place. It takes away from the fact that architecture is about, adorning with details and fenestrations. It takes away even the notions of, the modernist notions of a box. It's not even a box. This is a tube. And inside this tube is a very livable space, although small, that is created out of bare necessity materials. This concrete pipe is using its own concrete finish in the inside. We put a recyclable bamboo floor to raise up a flat level. And then we use recycled construction materials such as scaffolding pipes, timber, etc., to create the furniture inside. And this aesthetic is a kind of well-designed, low-cost aesthetic that is made affordable for people to actually live in a modern space. The sofa actually folds out to become a sofa bed. And the back of the AAAD has an area for cooking on the right-hand side and a small storage area on the left-hand side. And most interestingly, behind those frosted glass doors, you actually have a bathroom of your own, which for many of the poor people in our cities, they don't have their own bathroom. So here you have your own bathroom, you have your own shower in this water pipe. And it's great because water pipes are waterproof, so the water never leaks. We just need to drain it away. And because water pipes are manufactured en masse, they're very, very cheap. And there's a lot of factories around the world already creating concrete water pipes. So all we need to do is buy from their production. But also, concrete water pipes are very strong. And as you can see in this picture from the factory, they can be stacked up. So we can create OPOD housing buildings by stacking up these concrete water pipes like this, like in a concertina fashion. And they can be built very, very quickly without having to build the building from ground up. These are all built in the factory and brought to site and then stacked up quickly to create housing for people. And this is what we have also been practicing, moving these concrete water pipes around our city. So here's a time-lapse video where a OPOD, which is made out of 2 sections of water pipe, are loaded up onto a lorry at the factory yard and then driven to the site, basically placed into location, joined, and then connected with pipes for water and sewage and electricity, and therefore you have a building literally in one day. The power of such a small modular architecture in the context of creating housing is amazing. Here you see this building which we're proposing in Hong Kong is built between the gaps of 2 old buildings. By infilling that gap and stacking up OPODs, we can create a fast mini housing for people in the heart of the city. Because for so long, people say, oh, there's not enough land in the city to build housing. Well, it may be true that there are no big pieces of land, but if we look carefully at all of the leftover slots of land in an urban context, there's actually a lot of alleyways, a lot of backyards, a lot of unused car parks. We can use this kind of modular architecture to make use of those spaces in our city. We can use so many of the locations and spaces that normally we'd not consider building a conventional building. So here, we are looking at building 250 units of OPOD under the flyover. And that space, which is normally just left open or wasted or just used for a car park, can now house up to 1,000 people, which is really amazing. Or we can even build them on top of existing structures. So in Hong Kong, we have a lot of these ferry terminals. We can put these OPODs on top of the ferry terminals and create housing in the heart of the city, even with wonderful harbor views. How wonderful would that be? We're even looking at using some of the vacant cargo ships, which are now underutilized because global trade has come to a stop, and put OPODs onto cargo ships and make them into temporary housing for people. So architecture is not only an architecture with a big A, architecture is also with a big P. It is an architectural purpose, one that tries to use its innovations to alleviate the suffering of people. How wonderful architecture can be when it has a purpose. That's the first project I wanted to share with you. The second project is quite similar and it's called BoxPod. And BoxPod is slightly larger at 180 square feet in size, and it costs $20,000 to make. And this is BoxPod. It's a square, bigger version of OPOD, also actually made out of concrete water pipe. We actually call this a box culvert, a concrete water pipe that is square. And inside this concrete water pipe, we basically use very simple architectural design to create a space that has a bathroom it has a kitchen, and has a properly ventilated, cross-ventilated space for people to live, up to about 4 people. And this is a little animation of the inside. Again, we're using the simple concrete finish of the box culvert. We create windows and doors on the 2 ends with high-level cross-ventilation, with a higher ceiling so that we can put a fan on top. And again, it has its own bathroom. A very humble architecture, but again, a very practical architecture. And so in Hong Kong, we're building a housing project right now using about 80% box pod and 20% OPODs. So this is an animation of how this modular buildings can basically be stacked very quickly to create a community without having to do the usual series of casting concrete and doing rebar. And these projects can be incredible placemaking projects. They create the opportunity for people to live on a previously unused piece of land quickly. We can create community spaces inside. And this is what it will look like when it is completed. It's a new kind of architectural purpose that creates a place that delivers an honorable and decent place for people to live. Each of these boxes are pre-made in the factory, brought to site at 1/5 of the cost of conventional architecture. By placing them in a very architecturally orientated way, considering the community that's going to live there, we can create a village approach that allows people to not only live inside these box pods and OPODs, but to become a community again. So you see here a lot of alcove spaces for people to play chess, for people to exercise, both young and old. And this entire village can be built very quickly or dismantled very quickly in order to meet the needs of a city. We try to make the development as sustainable as possible by having green roofs that are actually urban farms for the residents to grow their own vegetables and even to sell them on to make money. We make these houses have some sustainable energy input with solar and wind. But more importantly, we allow a community to thrive in this new architecture that is so inexpensive by allowing people to create public spaces that are exercise areas, to use the walls for community graffiti art, to allow these public spaces to host activities like maybe, a basketball shooting competition or some kind of a community sharing class. All of this becomes an architectural purpose, which I think goes way beyond the fact that architecture is an object, is a space, is an object of art, but much more about dealing with the real present struggles of modern society. And I think architecture must take these steps forward in order to become and remain even more relevant in the modern world. It isn't just about iconic. It isn't just about sophistication. It isn't just about the wow. It is about people. And so I want to state again, slightly differently from the previous slide, which is, as an architect, what is your purpose? What is your purpose in your journey as an architect that you feel you have contributed through architecture to the betterment of the world? And I do believe the profession of architecture and architecture itself has a responsibility to achieve that. Thank you very much. That's my talk today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such staggering talk. I hope we all start looking so sensitively like you do towards the society. Now moving ahead to the question and answer session, we have a few questions coming from our audience, sir. How these OPOD house will be suited for all the seasons? Won't it be hot for summer?
Yes, they can be quite hot in the summer because they're concrete. So we try to make them as cross-ventilated as possible. And also in the case of box pod, we make it taller so that we are able to install a fan. And then air conditioning, if they can afford it or if they want to. But more or less, the concrete is about 20 centimeters thick. So it has some insulating properties. But we need to customize it for different regions of the world if they are to be deployed in different climates. So yes, they're not 100% ideal, but we try to mitigate it with low-cost ways, such as cross-ventilation.
I would take the next question. How is the tube being supported and how does the balance is being taken care of?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How is the tube supported and how is the balance taken care of?
Okay, so the tubes are stacked. You might be able to see this model behind me. I might move the computer a little bit closer. So basically, they are set in a concertina pattern, so they stay rigid. And then at the at the lower ones, they all have legs. So they have a plinth at the bottom, which has legs on them that basically wedges them in their position. And even this plate here is a plate which is concrete, is a plinth. So it spreads the pressure on the ground, but basically this one doesn't roll. The ones above basically don't have the legs, so they sit between the two at the bottom. So I hope that explains it.
Okay, so the next one, houses under flyovers, do they be effective to overcome the load provided by the vehicle moving over the flyovers?
Well, the flyovers are self-supported. So the flyover already exists and it's operating. So it has its own columns, has its own foundations. Basically, these O-pods, they sit in the space underneath the flyover as objects lying on the ground. So they're not taking any load from the flyover itself. They're independent.
So what is the lifespan of box pod and O-pod?
So they're very much similar to a concrete building. So you could say between 60 to 80 years would be the kind of material life of the building. And because they're very simple, they are quite easy to maintain as well. So there is another factor, which is because they're going to be moved around. So we expect each piece of land, you might be able to use it between 5 to 10 years. You don't want to waste these O-pods and box pods. You have to move them around. And when you move them around, they do get damaged. So it really depends on how many times you move them around. But the material should last, at least half a century. And then with good care and good moving, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Okay. So we'll take a last question, sir. Can you just put light on the drainage system?
Okay, so the drainage system, I have another model which I think my colleagues have taken away. So basically the drainage system is, if you talk about rainwater, the roof has a gutter and runs down a rainwater pipe. In terms of drainage for the toilets, etc., the back panel of the box pod actually has a removable panel with a toilet, and then all the pipes come out to the back, and then it runs down the shaft if it is stacked up, or it goes straight into the mains if it is on the ground level. So when they are created in the factory, all of the pipes for the drainage is pre-installed, and then when it is on site, it gets connected up with other piping into the system.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Now I would call upon our guest of honor, architect Amok Kumar sir, to share his views.
I don't know what to say because once I received the topic cybertecture, I was under an impression that in today's IT world, cyber world, it will be something like that, a very hyper technique building for a cyber technology. I tried to inquire the definition of cybertecture, and which is like this, the 21st century version of architecture. It is a conventional, it is a blending or a synergy of a conventional architecture combined with technology and new innovations that allows cyber architecture for a higher performance and than the conventional architecture. Thank you, James, because it was a very eye-opening presentation. I have been to Hong Kong 2 times, but I never saw this type of accommodation or this size of accommodation, which is beyond my dream. Yes, in India we have in squatter or slum. But in Bhopal, surprisingly, in my masters, I had my masters where I studied so many number of slums and squatter, and I was surprised to know after the survey they were having an average area of 450 square feet, and whereas in Hong Kong you experienced and now you are trying to give solution for 150 square feet. What I'm getting from your presentation, that the zeal what made you to do, the problem was there, you have tried to find the solution in that limited sources, because in your orientation you have thrust on one line, that every day you ask what is the purpose of an architecture. And this is the line which gives you energy. You see, in all societies, the learned people say, as you get up in morning, you should ask one question to yourself: who are you? Why you have come here? What is your duty? What is you going to do for the society? Everybody is doing for own self, but why you have come and what you are going to contribute. And as an architect, what you are going to contribute, it is more concise and specialization. And this particular question, when starts hampering anybody, definitely, if it is a holistic approach, he will come out with solutions. And you have come out with the solutions, and they are very good solutions, though I am having doubts that how much it will be successful in India type of country because of other local reasons, maybe the living pattern, the socio-economic pattern, because it is a solution in the urban area. It is to resolve the urban area problems. But in India, I advocate all the time, when we are having ample of rural area, try to create an opportunity there only, instead inviting them to urban area and then trying to solve the problem. But at the same time, we all are facing similar problems. In this total presentation, what I was expecting, if you can say, and in the last meeting what Ganesh was saying, Professor Ganesh, I am advocating the academicians and students, the architecture art part was there, use word was. In today's context, one has to be familiar with technology, because only technology as a tool you can cope up with the demand, and demand is time-based scale and fund-based scale. So can you help me in 2-3 minutes understanding how you manage the project in terms of economy, control of economy, and because it was a prefab or pre-engineered assembly, how it was being managed there?
Thank you very much, Professor, for your very insightful comments and question. So first of all, I'd just like to say that today I deliberately chose these projects as opposed to some of the other ones I've done before, which is much more, you can say, obviously technologically advanced. So I've made buildings that has AI inside. I've made buildings which are parametrically designed. So that's the kind of application of technology of cybertecture, which is in the other parts of the work. But tonight, I really wanted to focus on, you know, these very personal projects, which is trying to rediscover purpose. However, I would also like to say that these very humble projects are in fact very technologically advanced. As an idea, I think it is a technology in itself to pixelate and to modularize architecture down to something which is relatively repeatable and simple, yet cheap and mobile and adaptable. And that is actually quite a technological jump for architecture. It is not necessarily the first time it's been done, but it is still a technological approach. And specifically in this project, the technology that we have actually integrated into the process is quite interesting. So first of all, we're using a BIM platform. So building information modeling. So basically, we as the architects, we have designed it using BIM in 3D. That 3D model is being used by the factory to create the mold that actually casts the concrete. That 3D model is being used by the government to give us approval for the project. That model is going to be used to also manage the production process. So how many is done, how many is being done, how many is being delivered to the site, which one has been placed into which location. It's all from the same model. And then afterwards, the model is going to be further used by the landlord, which is going to be able to track who is living in which unit and for how long and whether they pay the rent. And then the landlord also uses this model for future planning. When they are moving the modules to another site, every module, OPOD, BoxPod has a specific ID digitally. And when it is moved, we know how it's going to be moved into what new configuration on another location. So it's literally a physical manifestation of a digital Lego set, where the Lego blocks are these modules. And they've been designed digitally, but thereafter in their procurement, in their transportation, in their installation, in their use, and afterwards in their further use on another plot, or using the same digital platform. And I think that is actually quite a breakthrough, because conventional buildings try to use BIM, and they use it to the extent of design coordination. They use it for, documentation. But in our case, we can use the platform further by allowing the technology to help us track and to help us to manage the process of the project from inception all the way to people actually living there.
Thank you, Architect James. I pay thanks to Professor Ganesh and Adit for giving me an opportunity to be a witness to listen to Architect James and taking clue from him. I think students are all listening to me and they will be convinced now is the right time. This is my address to academicians also, to increase the input and in the contact hours of the technological aspect, project management, fund flow economics. Has launched a scheme. It has already been approved. The government of India is trying to work on transit houses in urban areas, just to avoid that squatter or a slum coming up. Anybody who is coming to urban area will be allowed or allotted that transit house for 11 months. A regiment. The problem in their 4th year, 8th semester or 7th semester students to have an alternative to work as a design problem too. I think because by the time they'll be coming out of the college, they will get going on in the cities around. Institute for inviting me to witness this beautiful presentation, and I'll request Ganesh Babu to pay my regards to Vishwanathan ji also. Thank you.
Definitely, sir.
For such generous enlightenment. Now I'd like to invite our principal, Dr. Ganesh sir, to take over the session.
Thank you, Sana. I highly appreciate, Amok sir, you have observed the presentation so specifically and so keenly. I think that is a great lesson that all our spectators have to, and our students have to learn, your observation through the presentation. Thank you for your enlightening, words, what you have shared. And in the context of the presentation, Architect James, your preview of the presentation was excellent. Just to summarize, the old aged senior person sitting in the cage can afford this OPOD, which is a very good solution. And that is the purpose of the architecture. I hope all the delegates relate to this and understand. And for all the students, wherever there is a problem, it is an opportunity, even in architecture. There is a traffic jam, so an app came. There is another problem, another app came. So wherever problem is there, you have an opportunity. So with that, as a future, I would like to thank Amok sir for accepting and being here. In fact, he is in mid of another session and we are on time, sir. We are winding up on time. James, we have had an excellent evening and it's night there, late night. And thanks for your immediate acceptance. I should mention that our, meeting was set within the shortest time frame of 6 hours, if I'm correct. Thank you very much. And all the well-wishers, professors, deans, faculty members, students from all the colleges, from our college, and all the well-wishers, thank you for joining us. And be connected with us on every Thursday and Friday. We will be continuing these sessions on every week, Thursdays and Fridays on the same day. And we will see that time of 1 hour is really fulfilled. Thank you, and over to Sana.
Thank you, sir, for always being supportive. Since every beginning has an end, so before wrapping up the session, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the entire AAAD team, a hearty thanks to respected Architect James Law, sir, and Architect Amok Kumar, sir, for spending their valuable time among us and educating us towards the better future. A special thank to Mr. Pando, assistant to James, for helping us coordinate. I would like to thank Architect Senthil, the webinar coordinator, Architect Harshita, broadcasting coordinator. Would like to thank our principal Ganesh Babu, sir, without whom the session would not be possible. Thank you, sir, for introducing us to various speakers around the globe and giving us the exposure. A special mention to Aditya Group of Institution for always being kind and generous in accepting our request. I would also like to thank our participants and all the students. It's an honor to be a moderator for today's webinar with such immensely talented people on this platform. Thank you. Take care and stay safe.